And then I realized, wait a minute, this is not consensual anymore, because your wife thinks your don't ask, don't tell version is just hooking up with people, not falling in love, not creating a relationship, not creating a whole experience where now you're starting to live like another life.
Welcome to Making Polyamory Work. Hi, I'm Libby Sinback, and I want to thank you for joining me today. I'm a queer polyamorous mom and a relationship transformation coach, and I am committed to helping people who live and love outside the status quo, whatever that means to them, have extraordinary relationships, because relationships are at the core of our well-being as humans, and I believe that love is why we're here and how we heal. Welcome to part 2 of my conversation with Jessica Fern. If you haven't yet listened to part 1 of my conversation with Jessica, I recommend you pause this recording and just jump on over and listen to the first part of our conversation first. Now what we're going to get into is we're going to talk about a very particular aspect of privacy and secrecy and transparency, which is the don't ask, don't tell relationship. And we're going to talk about why somebody might want that, how it can potentially work, ways we've seen it work, ways we've experienced it ourselves, and things you might want to think about that might cause you to think twice about going for a don't ask, don't tell relationship. One last thing before we dive into the second half of the conversation with Jessica Fern is I want to remind everyone that Jessica and I will both be teaching, not together, but separately, at Southwest Love Fest in April in Tucson, Arizona. And I want to just say this is my 4th year attending Southwest Love Fest. It is the only conference that I have attended that many times, and it is the 3rd year that I am teaching at Southwest Love Fest, which is a tremendous honor. And I really would encourage you, if you are in the area or if you have the means to travel, to really think about putting this on your calendar. And if you are going to go, I have a treat for you, which is I can give you a special coupon code, 10% off of your registration. Just use the code GOSLOW when you are checking out, when you're purchasing your registration. And if you decide to go, please reach out to me and let me know, because I would love to meet up with my listeners at the conference. And like I said, I'll be teaching a workshop on the power of going slow in your relationships with my wonderful and amazing partner, Kier Kark. So please, please come. I hope I will see you at Southwest Love Fest in Tucson in April. And it's April 14th through the 16th. Now, on to part 2 of my conversation with Jessica Fern.
Yeah.
Well, and that brings us to our other topic.
Yeah.
So Jessica thought that it would be a good idea to tack on talking about don't ask, don't tell here. And and I did get a listener question about this, which was just, I'd love to hear more about this.
Right.
And because I feel like don't ask, don't tell is like the ultimate, or maybe not the ultimate. I suppose having an affair is maybe the ultimate privacy, secrecy. At that, you have on the extreme, the very integrated polycule who talks about everything with each other. On the other end of the extreme, you have an affair, and then like one step in, you have don't ask, don't tell.
Exactly. Yeah. Great. So I think we could start with maybe, when does it work? Have we seen it work?
Yeah. Have you seen it work?
I have 2 incidents or examples where I've heard of it working. One was a man whose wife had become paralyzed and could no longer be a sexual partner. And he was never going to leave her. He was her caretaker. He was devoted to staying into that marriage. And she also had a lot of sickness and like complications from her paralysis. So they were in and out of the hospital all the time. It was a full time experience of, medical caretaking. And she eventually, she knew, she said, you need to go get your needs met and do that. And don't tell me. And it worked from what I know. He had experiences separate and on the side when he could, and didn't feel like he was giving up all of him to stay as a caretaker to his wife. And she did seem fine with never knowing. Like, I mean, their life was so busy with all this other stuff that it just, at that point, it was almost irrelevant, you know? Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've had someone similar that I've worked with who that was their story as well. Like their partner
Yeah.
had a I believe a TBI and a similar like caretaking environment where there was not a sexual relationship between them. It was a caretaking relationship, and she was like, well, I'm gonna get out and live my best life when I'm able, and there
Yeah.
was an agreement between them that was okay.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And another place that I could see it working, but I haven't, I had someone that I spoke to where this was their arrangement and then it did stop working, honestly.
Yeah.
It's like if you travel a lot for work
That's what I
and
was gonna say. The
yeah,
business, right?
and you have the like, certain mile radius rule, like no one within
Yeah.
like 100 miles of where we live or something like that. And then you're having maybe a regular person that you're seeing that you see that you work with or at a business conference that you go to every year or something like that. I could see that working. I'll just say that with the person that I spoke to where this was their arrangement, eventually, and again, eventually, like we're talking a decade later, there was some curiosity about, I'm interested. I want to know. And then all of it kind of coming
The
out.
reality of how much there was. Yeah.
Yeah, was overwhelming and really challenging to that relationship. And then, I mean, I think that they did, a great job of putting the pieces back together and working through it. But it was a lot. And I mean, so did it work? I guess it worked, but then the arrangement needed to change.
Yeah.
And I guess that maybe is normal. Like maybe don't ask, don't tell is like a thing that is not meant to be a permanent arrangement, but
yeah, I see it as like a cast, right? Like if you break a bone and you need a cast, that's a temporary structure. And then eventually the cast has to come off. And, if you kept the cast on, it doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, because you can't move.
Right. Because then you can't move. And you need to move to keep healing, right? And regain. Right. So, and we could probably find other analogies like that. Like, yeah, it works. I've seen it work in temporary situations. We're like, oh, just for now, because we're having these other life stressors, like I don't need to know, or I don't want to know certain things, and let's just keep it at that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And you have a story.
I do. So, professionally, I would say I've only seen it, for years though, intimately within my client sessions. And other than one or two examples, the majority of the time it's like, oop, this isn't working. Right. And supporting people in how to, bring more transparency to their non-monogamy, right? And and healing or repairing the damage that the don't ask, don't tell has caused, and sometimes it's too much. So, but I found myself dating someone who was in a don't ask, don't tell, and I was like, oh, can I do this? Like, can I step into this?
Well,
so
can I ask you about that?
Yeah,
because I feel like if you're in the position that you're in, where you generally know this isn't going to work. Like, why were you a yes to it initially? Like, what was it that made you?
I was a curious to it. Right. Cause I did really like this person. And initially we sort of had a shared reason for coming together. We wanted to do certain kink play. Okay. And we were like very compatible in exactly what we were looking for. So it was just like, wow, I haven't come across this. And okay. Like, let's see, and he had, and he did, he had full consent to go have experiences, but it was don't ask, don't tell. Right. I had enough reason to believe that was the case. Right. Cause that's what comes up a lot for people is that people are cheating, but they're saying it's a don't ask, don't tell. And how do you know the difference? Right. Right. I had enough to at least trust. So, but yeah, pretty quickly, this was like, whoa, this isn't just a play partner. Like, this is more. And we were getting very close. And I realized, oh, this just doesn't feel good. Initially, it was from like an emergency contact situation. Like, if something happens to me, like, my people know to pick up the phone and call you if I'm in the hospital. Like they would know that they know your name, they would know to look, right? And like let you
Right.
know I'm in a coma. What happens if the reverse? So he was like, it's true. My friends know about you. I'll let my friends know if there's ever a thing. Like they have your number now, reach out. And it was like, okay. And then it would start to still be like the openness of information just didn't feel good to be a secret. It didn't feel good to be a secret is what started to happen, right? Especially because the people in my life could know about this partner. But it was like, oh, and then I realized, wait a minute, this is not consensual anymore because your wife thinks your don't ask, don't tell version is just hooking up with people, not falling in love, not creating a relationship, not creating a whole experience where now you're starting to live like another life,
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where we realize like, oh, with one partner, you're don't ask, don't tell. With me, you're full on polyamory. Like it felt like we were limping along because the structure that he was in or the style couldn't hold our relationship anymore and where it was growing.
Yeah, well, and I guess maybe that's what I'm hearing is maybe one of the key factors is like if there's something that like another structural thing that prevents the relationship from growing beyond. I mean, we could call it instead of a cast, we could call it a pot, a potted plant.
Yeah.
If you keep the pot small enough and it's a plant that can thrive in a small small pot, then maybe it's okay. Maybe it can work. Right. But that better be a plant that cannot grow too big because two things could happen. It could just die because it can't survive in that pot anymore, or it'll break the pot because it'll grow too big.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it felt like. It was like the pot we're in is cracking pretty quickly because we're growing beyond it very quickly. Yeah. And there were some bumps because he was so used to not sharing things. There were things, and our relationship though was based on more transparency. There were a few times where it was like, oh, that should have been something you shared, that's something I needed to know. And it wasn't an intentional, exclusion, but it was like, oh, right, I'm just not used to this.
You just have a practice of compartmentalizing.
Right. He's like, I'm so practiced in compartmentalizing. Like I have to like update my nervous system every time it's you because it's like, oh, right, we're doing something completely different,
Yeah.
So yeah, it hit its ceiling. And he thankfully was able to say to his wife, we have to be open about being open, you have to know that there's another person and they have a name. And at the very least,
wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I'm grateful for. Cause I was like, yeah, I can't continue in this structure much longer.
Well, but then that can be really tough if that's a major renegotiation of what was going on for him over there.
It really has been. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
has
And
been.
I've seen that too. I mean, that can be really tough, but I like what you said, which is that there was a point where it was becoming non-consensual.
Exactly.
Like that what she thought she was consenting to as his wife was not what was happening anymore.
Yeah. And that was the place too, where I was like, I don't want to participate in that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a thing that I think is worth saying about don't ask, don't tell is, what I'm making up about the person that you were in a relationship with was like, you did think that it was a plant that would fit in a pot. Like you did
initially
think it's this kink thing that you're going to do together. And that's a place where I could see like it making a lot of sense to have that policy. If that's what you know for sure that you're always going to want.
Yeah.
And of course, then you sometimes don't know. Sometimes something happens, it's unexpected and you have to update what you think you want. But I guess like, that's not a bad reason to, I guess, enter into that kind of like go in that direction. But I think that if don't ask, don't tell is something that is like maybe bumpers for you or something to protect you because you're afraid, the thing that, and maybe there's a hope that maybe you won't need it anymore, or maybe there's a hope that, your partner will just protect you. I don't know. I guess the thing that comes up for me is this idea of sort of beginning as you mean to go on. And if you think that down the line, anywhere down the line, there might be a point where you're going to want to start knowing, or if the dynamics are going to change, which of course you can't always predict. I'm just thinking about that couple again, where for years they had don't ask, don't tell, and then much was revealed and how overwhelming that was. And I'm thinking about how much easier it might have been if it was coming in drips. If there was some kind of titration process.
I was just going to use that word. It's one thing, right? If it's used to titrate the nervous system.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And also, is the don't ask, don't tell, right? Like an initial strategy just to get on board and be like, it's enough to do this. Let's not overwhelm ourselves. But ideally it's, temporary and we start titrating. Or is it just an avoidance?
Right. Exactly.
And is it an avoidance strategy? And, I don't know, is this the elephant in the room, or just being like honest? Like a lot of these don't ask, don't tell agreements, they're not arising from the healthiest relationships I've seen.
Oh, wow.
They're not arising out of relationships that are having healthy emotional connection and intimacy. It's often there is a lot of avoidance. We can't share things. We keep having, defense, all the 4 horsemen, right? There's a lot of criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling.
Well, and there's probably a lot of other stuff they're avoiding dealing with.
Exactly.
And if they have this practice of avoiding, then it just makes sense to stick with that strategy.
Exactly. Yeah. And a lot of times, it is for good reasons. Like people have the structure of their family and their kids and their work, and they don't want to disrupt that. But their intimacy, their secure attachment at an emotional, intimate level is pretty poor. But they're like, let's just maintain the structure of our life and raise our kids, and keep our lifestyle. And we don't have to really do much of this relationship stuff, is what I see as well. Yeah.
Well, and I guess where I'm sitting, because I always want to like hold space for if people want a non-intimate, business partner type relationship with each other, and that's the kind of relationship that they want. Who am I to say that that's wrong?
Yeah.
But I do think that then you have to be like, that has to be clearly and openly negotiated. And if you're in a pattern of avoidance, you might not be able to say,
exactly,
by the way, I want no intimacy with you. I just want us to be, business partners, co-parents, financial partners, et cetera. But like my emotional intimacy and sexual intimacy and whatever is non-existent with you. This is a transactional relationship.
Yeah. And I see that work a lot.
Yeah.
But I do see when I see that work a lot, they know that the other person has partners. They know, they might even know those partners, or, they're not in this situation where like, oh, you're caught going out to lunch with your partner and now everyone thinks we're cheating, or, that kind of.
Well, and honestly, if you're able to have that kind of transparent conversation with your partner about like, here's what we really are to each other.
Yeah.
Which again, completely reasonable and legitimate to do that. Why would it be scary to know about that they have other partners? Like, why would that be hard and scary?
Right. And maybe you don't want to know details, but you just know, oh, I'm going to go spend the night, or I'm going to go see the person. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I feel inclined to, recap a little bit, maybe what we've talked about, which is, just to say, with privacy, it's important to negotiate it.
Mm-hmm.
You have a right. You have a right to have boundaries around what's shared about privacy and have privacy. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. That's actually a consent issue.
Mm-hmm.
But there's the flip side of the consent issue, which is there are also some things people do have a right to know about you that you might be uncomfortable with them knowing, but there's certain things that maybe you can't you can't totally say no to everything,
exactly.
Or at least there's going to be a friction there potentially.
Yeah.
But just because you're polyamorous doesn't mean it's the Wild West and suddenly your whole personal life and everything about you is fair game for every single person that your partner might know.
Yep.
Or have known. Another thing to look at would be when you're thinking about the flow of information, are there power dynamics at play?
Yep.
And look at those. because if a more established partner feels entitled to know everything about their partner's other partners, but they don't want things shared about them, that's not cool.
Yep.
And then don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah, there's some cases where it can work. I think we're suggesting if you're going to try it, have it be more temporary than permanent.
And think about why.
Think about why.
You're doing it.
Right. Are you doing it just to avoid and just sort of deny? Or is it about titrating so that you can integrate moving forward with non-monogamy and adding more and more information as you go? Yeah.
Or are you in a very particular structure where it doesn't make sense to integrate this part of your life into this other part of your life?
Yeah, right. I would say, though, even if you're not fully integrating, there can still be knowledge, like minimum knowledge.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I have another partner and that's where I'm going. Right.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. Yeah. Versus just leaving. Right.
Yeah.
Or lying.
Yeah.
And I think that's okay. So here's just one final thing. Often with don't ask, don't tell, it's not just don't ask, don't tell. It creates an environment where people find themselves needing to lie.
Yeah.
To maintain the don't ask, don't tell. Right. So it's not just the absence of information. It becomes now the addition of having to say where you were, but you can't say where you really were. Like that starts to happen a lot.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing I can see there, if it's something being asked of you as a condition of you being able to pursue interests that you might have, but that's not what you want. Yeah. And you're not good at it. And then you're stuck kind of performing lies and stuff to just, I don't know, that's another place where, again, you got to think about, is this something you can consent to and agree to for yourself? You know?
Yeah, exactly. And I see a lot of people who are put into, and this isn't just in don't ask, don't tell. This is also when you have partners that are, in the closet about being non-monogamous. The secret, invisible partners, I mean, eventually it can become sort of a trauma for them. Yeah. Right. To always be a secret, to not get to be out. Right.
Yeah. Well, I feel like that this is such a rich topic and we could keep talking about it. We could have like a part 2, part 3, part 4.
hopefully it'll generate more questions and then we could do a part 2. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much for being here with me, Jessica. And, do you want to tell a little bit about what you're working on now and where people can get more of you?
Yeah, great. JessicaFern.com is the easiest place. And my Polysecure workbook just came out a few months ago. So that's a new thing people can get. My next book, Polywise, will be coming out later this year. And I'm super excited about that one. Yeah, and I'm moving into some teaching this year. So I'll be doing a secure attachment with self workshop, and I'll start to train some therapists and some Polysecure stuff. So if people sign up for my website, they'll get sort of those announcements as I make them.
Oh, fantastic. And we'll both be at Southwest Love Fest in Tucson, Arizona in mid-April, and I'll post about that in the show notes as well. You can see us both there.
Yes. Are you presenting?
Yeah.
What are you presenting at?
I am presenting with my partner, Kier. We're going to talk about how to move out of urgency and slow down and why that's important.
I like this.
What about you?
Me and my co-parent and now co-author of the next book, David, we are talking about codependency and non-monogamy and differentiation. I know.
All the hot topics.
It's a chapter from the next book. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
I will see you later, Jessica. And please come see us in Tucson. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you have any thoughts about what I've said or a question for the show, I would love to hear from you. You can reach me via my website, libbysinbeck.com, or you can connect to me on any of my social channels. I'm on Instagram and Facebook. I'll also say that if you're loving my podcasts, but feel like your relationship could maybe use some more help, this is work I do with my coaching clients and in the relational non-monogamy circle. If you're interested, you can either set up a free introductory session with me to see if coaching might be a fit for you, or check out the Relational Non-Monogamy Circle online at libbysinbeck.com/RNMC. If you love this podcast, please share it. Share it with your friends, your networks, your Facebook groups, etc. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you listen on iTunes or Stitcher, it would be super awesome if you left a review or a comment, because that will help more people find the show. Making Polyamory Work is created by me, Libby Sinbeck. It is edited by Finn of the Normalizing Non-Monogamy podcast and hosted on the Anchor.fm platform. Van de Leon manages the website and posts the transcripts. Thanks for being with me today, and I'll see you soon.